Good morning. Well, it's been a while. I was going to take off a little time for the holidays, but the holidays quickly turned into an emergency trip down to Arizona to see my father-in-law in the hospital, and he made it home, which was not expected when we first took off. So we got home late Friday. So this is the first day I've been back since I've gotten back from Arizona. I'm trying to remember. I'm clicking all these fun buttons, looking and learning. It's been so long, I don't even know what I'm doing anymore. How do I swipe this back where it belongs? Oh, there we go. Good. And so if I tap this, what happens? Oh, that's not what I want. Okay. And then I had to figure out where we were. I couldn't remember. I saw on my, that we were in chapter 10 and that I had done 2 parts, but I couldn't remember if I finished 10 or not. So it looks like we finished chapter 10 of Ecclesiastes, and now we're in chapter 11. So, Ecclesiastes, chapter 11, verse 1, and I have a little, down to verse 8, I gave it my own little title of Live Generously Even in Uncertainty. Cast your bread upon the waters, for you will find it after many days. Give a serving to 7 and also to 8, for you do not know what evil will be on the earth. So the waters, I can tell you that in the New Testament and the Old Testament, some of the prophetic books, including Revelation, the waters can be a symbolic term for the nations, just to give it abroad to all. To give it to 7, give it to 8. 7's the number of completion. So giving it to 8's like one above that. And it's talking about just giving. Verse 3, if the clouds are full of rain, they empty themselves upon the earth. If a tree falls to the south or north, in the place where the tree falls, there it shall lie. He who observes the wind will not sow, and he who regards the clouds will not reap. That's a little cryptic. That's one of those verses I feel like I need to go back and restudy again. It's been so long. Now, the clouds are full of rain, they empty themselves, though. That right there makes sense. And the idea is if you have the ability to give, then be giving. Be generous. Have a generous spirit and be giving to those in need. If a tree falls to the south or the north, in the place where the tree falls, there it shall lie. And maybe he's just basically saying, wherever you find yourself, that's where you are, And he who observes the wind will not sow. And so these people are making observations of when to do this and when not. As you do not know what is the way of the wind, or how the bones grow in the womb of her who is with child, so you do not know the works of God who makes everything. In the morning you sow your seed, in the evening do not withhold your hand, for you do not know which will prosper, either this or that, or whether both alike will be good. And so he's talking there about how you sow seeds, right? Now, first it talks about how we don't fully understand the ways of the Lord, right? For someone back then, how the bones grow inside the womb. That would have been how would that even work? And we know it better now, but we don't. Getting a little sidetracked with science here. But if you're not familiar with this is miraculous. And as far as I know, as far as I've learned myself, that science cannot explain this. You see, as soon as an egg is fertilized, you've got cells, right? And the cells begin to multiply. But in the very beginning of the process of a baby being born, the cells are identical cells. And for all intensive purposes, if we were able to take those cells, and this is not supposed to sound grotesque or wrong, but the idea is if we could take each cell and divide it and study each cell, we would see identical cells. They would be identical in every way, shape, and form that we can see. And they actually multiply and multiply and divide and divide. That's the idea, is they split and they split. And it's just a lot of cells, and it's a baby, because these cells are supernatural. I guess it's natural because it's just how every baby is born. But what amazes people is these two cells are identical and they split into 4. And those 4 split into 8. But then at some point, one of the 8 identical cells decides, I'm going to become a liver. And another cell, which was absolutely identical to the first, decides, I'm going to become a kneecap. And another cell that was absolutely identical to the first, I'm going to become a nose. And another cell that was identical to the first, the heart, the brain, the toenails. I mean, the idea is there's something going on there, something written into the code, into the the genes of this creation. And so I've always heard it said, the idea that for a while there, atheists and people thought, that, well, now we understand how things work, so that's why we don't need God. Back then, they needed an explanation for lightning and thunder, so they pinned it on God, but now we understand what makes lightning and thunder. But you know what? That's the thing, is understanding how something works doesn't deny the creator. I fully understand how an assembly line works. That doesn't mean Henry Ford didn't exist, right? So getting back to this, do you know, how the bones grow in the womb of her who's with child, Ecclesiastes 11:5. So it's just saying, you do not know the works of God who makes everything. If you can't understand this, imagine the God who does everything. So now, in the morning you sow your seed. Why? Because you're expecting those plants to grow and you to receive in return a profit, right? You sow the seed expecting a return. But then it says, and in the evening, do not withhold your hand. That is the giving, the generosity we've been talking about in this chapter, being generous. For you do not know which will prosper, either this or that, or whether both alike will be good. So what he's saying there, just like you invest, so today you put money into the bank account with interest. You get a CD. You invest in your retirement, in a 401k, in a mutual fund, or the stock market. You purchase a home with the assumption that this home is going to go up in value and that it's going to be a worthwhile investment. What he's saying here, Solomon's saying, is, but when you give with generosity. Now, here, I think the context is more giving to people directly in need, but to the church would also apply, right? That's because the church then goes and gives it to people in need. So you're kind of just having the church help with the process. But it is, when we give with generosity, we might be receiving more in return than sowing of those seeds in that field. Now, you're still going to go sow your seeds. You're still going to make wise decisions. But he's saying whether both alike will be good, or this one or that one. We don't know which one's going to truly prosper the most. 7 and 8, truly the light is sweet, and it is pleasant for the eyes to behold the sun. But if a man lives many years and rejoices in them all, yet let him remember the days of darkness, for they will be many. All that is coming is vanity. Solomon bringing us back to some of his depressing, But he's just saying, really, to enjoy the years that you have. And this is where he has that kind of the grim, and I guess it's been a while, so I'll go back and remind that the book of Ecclesiastes is full of good wisdom, but with the key words, under the sun. I forget how many times it is. I know it's written back on my first page here. 27 times. 27 times in this little book of 12 chapters is under the sun. And so if you're focusing under the sun exclusively, what goes on this earth in this life, he's not really looking forward towards eternity. And it just wasn't the focus of this book. He tried all these earthly things to bring him pleasure, and then he found out what the results were on earth. And so, to some extent, it is a little carnal, but it's also a little bit true that This life will come to an end. And so you should enjoy what you got while you got it. That's what he's saying there in 7 and 8, right? And just the sun is sweet to behold it. And sometimes we should just maybe be thankful for beholding the sun another day. Sometimes my kids drive me crazy. But quite often, I just pause and reflect on how beautiful they are, on their smiles, their goofiness, their joy, their love for their father, and we can let all the craziness steal our joy. But there'll come a day when this won't be available anymore. So enjoy it while you got it. And be generous along the way. So that's kind of where he's going here in this first part. Oh man, you know what? I just realized there's only 2 more verses in the chapter. Let's just knock these 2 verses out, even though they're their own little section. Live accordingly, for death is a certainty. Oh, and you know what? Maybe 7 and 8 actually kind of belongs down there. Maybe I should have chunked that a little different. 1 through 6 is the generosity. 7 and 8 is the death being a certainty. So he already was saying, that these days are coming. Let's just knock these out real fast. Rejoice, O young man, in your youth, and let your heart cheer you in the days of your youth. Walk in the ways of your heart and in the sight of your eyes. But know that for all these, God will bring you into judgment. Therefore remove sorrow from your heart, put away evil from your flesh, for childhood and youth are vanity. Vanity. That which, it's not perishes. Once again, I know I've got this written down back here, the phrase that I'm wanting to say. That which vanishes. Is that what I just said? Yeah. Vanity. That which vanishes. Are any of you not little kids anymore? Maybe you don't consider yourself a youth. Would you tell young people? Do you have kids, grandkids, or whatever? Enjoy these days while you've got them. That's what Solomon's saying. Enjoy your days. Walk in the ways of your heart, right? And again, this is under the sun logic. And there's something to it. It's not the eternal mindset that we as Christians are supposed to have, but it doesn't mean that there isn't some worldly wisdom to glean from. And that's what he's just saying. In the ways of your heart. He's like, young people, it's just like, yeah, you know what? Enjoy this life. Do some fun things. I just read it last night, taught it last night, so I should memorize it better. But in Instructions to the Rich, in 1 Timothy 6, he commands the rich, this, that, and the other. And then he tells them, though, not to trust in uncertain riches. That's a great balance to Ecclesiastes. But it says, but in the living God, who gives us richly all things to enjoy. And I think that's the ticket, is that God does give us things to enjoy. Jesus healed the sick, and he did many miracles for people in need. But he also made wine at a wedding. That was not a need. That was to bring joy. That was for a married couple to enjoy this moment in their life. And so God is interested and invested in your joy. And it doesn't all have to be that spiritual joy of heaven. And it is, I think, the chief joy that we ought to be seeking, but it's not at the expense of earthly joy. That we can't enjoy hiking up a mountain and that view of God's creation. That we can't enjoy the taste of good food. That we can't enjoy the love and that satisfaction, that beautiful satisfaction of children. So there's a lot of earthly things that are not wrong, and they are not wrong to enjoy. God wouldn't have made them that way if he didn't want us to enjoy them. He's given us all things. It's to enjoy them. And so that's what he's just saying there in Ecclesiastes 11. He's just saying, enjoy those things. Enjoy them while you can. All right. I'll see you guys tomorrow, chapter 12, and then on to Song of Solomon. Ooh. Love you guys. Missed you. I'm glad to be back. Take care.